years ago, and I remember this very vividly, I was sitting at lunch with a man who I believed had my best interests at heart. He was this straight shooter kind of guy, you know, someone who told you flat out whatever it was he saw that was wrong with you. And I had welcomed his opinion at first, but at this lunch, I began to realize that this relationship was sort of toxic because it wasn't a two-way conversation. You know, he wasn't open to hearing my take on him. Yeah. But at the very same time, I mean literally at the same time, I've got this guy talking to me, I'm receiving these text messages from another friend who is telling me that I'm like the next Dietrich Bonhoeffer or some other highfalutin theologian because she really enjoys my writing and my speaking, and she just was thinking very highly of me. And so the juxtaposition in this very moment was jarring. Here I've got this guy berating me over his taco salad, while this other person on the text is holding me to this very high standard. But here's the deal. Both of them were attempting to be kind. One thought that his kindness was in taking me down a few pegs, while the other person thought that it was a kindness to build me up and put me on this pedestal. But you know, neither of them were right, because both of those kindnesses were being offered at the level of the ego, because they both expected me to thank them for it, to see it as a gift. A true kindness, though, from either of them would have just been to hold space and show appreciation for me, just as I tried to hold space and appreciate them. We go wrong with our kindness when we expect something in return, especially when we expect gratitude. Kindness should be offered freely, wastefully even, without a desire to be acknowledged or praised. During that lunch hour, all I could do in that level of just, oh my God, what is happening? was just smile at both of them and remember that my function was to simply appreciate them both and love them. And that is the kind of kindness that makes us all say, oh yeah. What can y'all do with this brick? Give me some extra, build a house. That's good. What else? What else can we do? Doorstop. Throw it at somebody. Decorate with it. What else? What else can we do with a brick? What are you playing back there? Was that thick as a brick? Huh? What else? Start building. Walls. All right.
Bookends.
Bookends.
You got to break it in half first.
That's right. Yeah, you got to bust it up. So there's lots of uses for this brick, right? Bob was very zealous. So this has actually been a sort of a stage display, and Bob did his part really well. Then my microphone failed, so hey, well, all right. So this was actually a demonstration to show what several recent studies from Georgetown University researcher Christine Porath discovered how rudeness affects us. If we are even exposed to a short episode of rudeness, it decreases the creative ability of those who witness such episodes and also those who were on the receiving end of a rude act. They took a brick, and they asked participants to talk about what they would do with a brick after this rude episode. And there were ideas such as build a house, build a path. And those who had not seen an act of rudeness, though, or they had not been treated rudely, they had more creative answers for what to do with a brick, such as use it as a goalpost for a street soccer game, or decorate it like a pet and give it to a kid. And as these experiments progressed, the uses for the brick after experiencing or witnessing rudeness got downright vengeful. Some said they would use the brick to hurt somebody, or they would use it to smash the experimenter's face, or trip someone, or throw it through a window, throw it at somebody. Those who experienced rude comments were also more likely to reassemble the letters remdue, R-E-M-D-U-E, into murder rather than demure. Red rum, right. Another study found that retaliation was the order of the day when rudeness occurred, with 94% finding a way to get even with those who offended them, and 88% say they got even with organizations that caused them to be offended. And those numbers, oh my goodness, no one should be surprised by any of those numbers. In these days of tribalism and separation and suspicion, we swim in a sea of rudeness. Check your Facebook feed for 5 minutes. You will witness so many acts of rudeness that your creative juices will dry up like a desert. Why do we do this to ourselves? Well, because we have an ego. And it sees the world as transactional. What you do to me, I will do to you. And it's not just returning tit for tat in rudeness. We treat our acts of kindness the same way, which is why kindness can become a barrier to love. We all think that we're kind people and that we would go out of our way for each other and truly live into the fact that we believe we are our brother and sister and siblings keeper. But too often we only act kindly to one another to get a payoff. If our kindness isn't reciprocated, or it's ignored, or it's met with indifference or rudeness, what happens? We get all offended. I tried to be nice, but they just brushed me off. Screw them. I'm not ever being nice to them again. See how they treated me. And then we start tossing the bricks around in our head, smashing those who aren't properly grateful for our kindness and concern. And that loving creativity and joy that we want to put out into the world, it just shrivels up and dies on the vine. Buddhist nun Pema Chodron reminds us, though, that being kind is an act of staying open unconditionally to the world. If someone rejects our kindness, it is a reminder to stay kind, to keep putting that creative love into the world. Because the peace we are looking for, she says, is not the peace that crumbles as soon as there is difficulty or chaos. Whether we're seeking inner peace or global peace, she says, or a combination of the two, the way to experience is to build on the foundation of unconditional openness to all that arises. Peace isn't an experience free of challenge, free of rough and smooth. It's an experience, she says, that's expansive enough to include all that arises without feeling threatened. But we do feel threatened, just like me walking past those abortion protesters. That egoic part of ourselves that expects to be recognized and thanked for being kind in an unkind world. But as A Course in Miracles tells us this morning, feeling injured or hurt by the rudeness of the world and wanting to retaliate in some way is simply an attack on ourselves. When you attack, A Course says this morning, you are denying yourself. You are specifically teaching yourself that you are not what you are. Your denial of reality precludes the acceptance of God's gift because you have accepted something else in its place. And that something else is the ego's insane belief that we live in a transactional world where our kindness has to be rewarded in some way by those we are kind to. This is the precarious peace that the ego offers, and as Chodron says, it falls apart at the first sign of challenge. We make the insane choice for the ego's transactional kindness, A Course says, because you still believe that you can get something you want. It follows, it says, that you want something other than peace of mind, but you have not considered what that must be. Yet the logical outcome of your decision is perfectly clear if you look at it. By deciding against your reality, which is love and peace and joy, you have made yourself vigilant against God and God's kingdom, and it is this vigilance that makes you afraid to remember God. In other words, We're using the ego's definition of kindness as some sort of transaction to get what we think we want, and that is the world's acknowledgement, the world's gratitude. But instead, we create a barrier to love. The ego believes that we are only each other's keeper when we receive thanks and praise for our kindness in the world. If we don't get that, as the research shows, we tend to get even. Those of us who say we want a kinder world, though, we have a responsibility to see the ego's schemes for what they are, barriers to us truly achieving that peace of mind, that peace that passes all understanding, that kind of peace that brings kindness into this world without any conditions on it and keeps putting it out there no matter how it is received. Jubilants, we are each other's keeper. And that means we gotta constantly walk our talk and always keep our hearts open. Breathe deeply. If it is our ego's insistence that kindness is a transaction instead of a state of being, so how do we begin to break down this barrier to love? Well, according to Pema Chodron, we practice breathing, especially two Buddhist practices. One she calls compassionate abiding, and the other is called Tonglen. Compassionate abiding is a way to open our heart whenever we feel stuck, or as Chodron says, we find ourselves tightening, spiraling into blame, acting out, or obsessing. And when those thoughts and emotions arise, we breathe in. And we allow those feelings of aggression or disappointment or craving to just exist within ourselves. We remain open to them as we breathe in. And as we breathe out, we're not sending the discomfort away, Chodron says. Instead, we're ventilating it. We're loosening the tension around it. We're becoming aware of the space in which the discomfort is occurring. Compassionate abiding brings a sense of loving kindness to ourselves, Chodron says, because it allows us to touch and recognize our feelings of failure, our feelings of shame, and even what Chodron calls murderous rage within ourselves. We can clearly see those times that we want to throw the brick and destroy something, instead of using that material to build up something positive in the world. This process, Chodron says, it helps us transform what she calls those hard, reactive, rejecting energies into basic warmth and openness. Opening to all the forms of unkindness we inflict upon ourselves is the first step to being able to handle all the unkindness that comes at us from outside ourselves. And I dare say this, if we can learn to be kind to ourselves first, we will find that the world becomes kinder around us, since our inner world reflects in the outer world. And this is what a Course is getting at when it tells us not to side with sickness in the presence of a Son of God, even if he believes it, for your acceptance of God in him acknowledges the love of God which he has forgotten. If we react with unkindness when others are rude to us, we're merely affirming our belief in separation. But if we can stay open even the slightest bit, especially to our inner rudeness, we will be better prepared to remain kind when we encounter rudeness in the world. This is where the practice of Tonglen can be valuable. Chodron says this practice short-circuits our "it's all about me" default ego setting. It's similar to compassionate abiding because on the in-breath, again, we breathe in discomfort, and on the out-breath, we breathe out compassion. But Tonglen goes beyond compassionate abiding, Chodron says, because it includes the suffering of other beings and longing that is suffering, that this suffering should be removed. So in compassionate abiding, we're breathing in and creating space for our own shame, blame, rude thoughts. We're holding space. When we breathe out, we're just ventilating them. We're just holding a space for our own ego, for our own shame thoughts, for all the bad things that we believe about ourselves, all the rudeness within. With Tonglen, we are breathing in the suffering of those around us. And we are breathing out compassion. That we all be well. That we all be happy. That we all experience the joy and peace of life. So Chodron recommends taking these two practices, which I forgot about the other day. I'd already written this sermon. I knew it was here, but I forgot all about it. So don't get down on yourself if you walk out and you forget. But Chodron recommends practicing Tonglen whenever you're out in the world. Practice compassionate abiding for yourself. And Tonglen when you go out. Since our ego can use our acts of kindness as a barrier, Tonglen gives us that way to practice kindness sort of on the sly within ourselves, underneath the ego's radar, so we can transform that recalcitrant energy into openness and a blessing for everyone. Chodron says the practice, go and practice. The first person you see when you leave here today, breathe in with this thought. May both of us be able to feel feelings like this without it causing us to shut down to others. May both of us be able to feel these feelings without causing them to shut down to others. And as you breathe out, just send happiness and contentment to them. She says, if you encounter an animal or a person who's clearly in distress, pause and breathe in with the wish that they be free of their distress. Send out relief to them. It's an amazing way to fulfill the directive from A Course in Miracles that says not to side with the sickness or rudeness or unkindness that you witness in the world. If you can breathe in the rudeness, which is really just the outward manifestation of inward suffering, if you remain open in your heart and breathe out compassion, you're going to see a whole new world. A world of love and joy and peace opens up within you, and then it transfers to the world around you. It's exactly the advice that the Apostle Paul gave those in the early church in Galatia. In today's reading, he warned them, and he warns us, that what we plant in this world is what grows. If we plant selfishness and rudeness and ignore the needs and suffering of those around us, we get a nice crop of weeds, Paul says. And weeds will be the only thing you have to show for your life. But the one who plants in response to God, Paul writes, letting God's Spirit do the growth work in them, harvests a crop of real, eternal life. So let's not allow ourselves to get fatigued in doing good. At the right time, we will harvest a good crop if we don't give up or quit. Right now, therefore, he says, every time we get the chance, every time we get the chance, and that will be every time you walk out of your house, let us work for the benefit of all. Every time. And not just with those out there, but every time you have your own shaming thought, every time you are rude to yourself, let us work for the benefit of all. For yourself and for others. The ego is dead set on giving us nothing but bricks in our lives. And it's up to us whether we build them, we use them to build structures of unity, or we build walls against love and against one another and harm others and create more rudeness, more tribalism, more separation. And I'm going to tell you, it's not easy work. I forgot. I had written this sermon. I took a walk half a mile from my house and got triggered, and I didn't breathe for me or for them. It's easy. It's easy to forget, especially when you get triggered. But you know, that's a healing moment for me, because now I know my trigger. Got to work on that. And my massage therapist actually didn't show up. He forgot about the appointment, so I got to go back tomorrow. He aborted my appointment. He did. They take my brick. Well, I'll stop and ask them, what would y'all do with this brick? That might be interesting. That might be an interesting way to start a conversation.
better bring a Nerf brick.
A Nerf brick, right? But really, I get a do-over, man. How cool is that? I get to walk back there tomorrow and do it again. I get a mulligan. And I don't know if I'll start a conversation. I am off work tomorrow too, so I might start a conversation on the way back, but y'all be with me, so.
You want to go with me?
Yeah, I know. You're all right, man. But just, what a different experience I might have tomorrow if I never say anything other than good morning to them, but just breathe in whatever it is that makes them suffer so much that they do that. And breathe in the suffering of the people going in and out of that clinic. And breathing out compassion for all of us. Every time we get a chance. Every time we get a chance. Let us work for the benefit of all. I invite you in this moment. Breathe deeply. I invite you to remain open to your own brick thrower. That part of you that feels shame. That part of you that feels doubt. That part of you that feels fear or even rage and anger. Don't turn away from your inner rudeness. Abide compassionately with it. Serve it some tea. Allow it to be felt in your body. Give it space. And then breathe it out. Allow it to flow out of you as healed and released energy. And then, when you feel ready, breathe deeply for those around you. Take in their suffering. Hold it closely. Give it your love. And breathe out compassion and joy and peace for all of us. And if you can remember to do this regularly, then you will be ready to do unconditional acts of kindness for everyone and anyone, be they family, friends, a stranger, even those who trigger us as we walk down the road. It doesn't matter if your kindness is returned. It doesn't matter if your kindness is ignored. It doesn't matter if your kindness is taken advantage of. All that will matter is that we know that we are fulfilling our function of being one another's keeper. Just by breathing in and breathing out in a compassionate manner, we remind ourselves and our holy siblings of who we truly are. We are all the light of the world. We are meant to shine with love for as long as we can breathe. Every time we get the chance, let us work for the benefit of all. So our choice is clear, Jubilants. Are we going to side with this sickness of incivility and separation and rudeness that we see all around us? Or will we be the ones who are reminding ourselves and those around us of our wholeness and remembering that we are creators of this world with everyone we meet? So I invite you, what are you planting in this moment, Jubilants? Will you be harvesting weeds? Or are you going to harvest that kind of fierce, compassionate kindness that makes the whole world say, oh, yeah.